Good day. I'm Andrea Spindle, Executive Director of the Canadian Anti-Semitism Education Foundation and co-chair of End Jew Hatred Canada. CAEF is a registered charity, and End Jew Hatred is a movement to bring Jews and allies together to confront all forms of anti-Semitism and demand civil liberties for Jews and the right to be free of oppression, harassment, and discrimination, free to wear Jewish symbols, to love and support Israel, the nation state of the Jewish people, and the right to be included in all facets of society. We are very clear that anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism, and those who support the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement are promoting the violent destruction of Israel, the land of the Jewish state, and the overthrow of democracy and civil liberties for all the citizens of that country, not just the Jews. The campaign that spreads vicious lies, anti-Semitic tropes, and demonizes Israel is fed by Jew haters, by anti-democratic forces, by Islamofascists and extremist leftists. The extreme right is anti-Semitic and dangerous, but to date has not penetrated all the institutions of our society, as has the left. And their pals, who promote a progressivism that is actually quite fascist in many respects, and often is aligned with a form of Islam that is fundamentally on the extreme right. This is all hard to explain. So we're really delighted to have an incredible expert and an incredible friend of the Jewish people to help us understand these ideological and religious complexities. Before I introduce our guest, let me remind you that CAEF is a nonprofit that depends on donations for all programming and civic actions that include public rallies, webinars, advocacy, and the production of educational materials. You can donate at www.caef.ca. I'd also like to thank our various NGO sponsors, partners that are with us in spirit, and some of whom we'll hear from today. Our guest today is Imam Mohammed Tawhidi, who is an Islamic scholar, educator, best-selling author, public speaker, and one of the leading voices in the global movement of social Islamic reform. Born in the holy city of Qom, Iran, into a spiritual family with a history of decades of Islamic seminary, he immigrated to Western Australia, where he completed studies in Perth and Islamic studies, doctrine, philosophy, and theology at the Islamic Seminary of the Holy City of Guam. Imam Tawhidi was publicly ordained as an Islamic authority in the Holy City in Iran by the Senior Grand Ayatollah Shirazi in 2010. He has dedicated his life to ideologically tackling the spread of Islamic extremism and has delivered speeches at conferences, parliaments, mosques, Islamic centers, churches, synagogues, temples, and universities across the Middle East, Europe, America, Asia, and Australia. He is licensed by the Islamic leaders of the highest order to lead and represent the Muslim community. Imam Tawhidi enjoys very positive international diplomatic relationships with numerous governments and provides regular advice on counterterrorism. He was recognized by the Senate of Canada on June 13th, 2018. He is fluent in Arabic, English, and Farsi. Imam Tawhidi is also an advisor to the Global Imams Council, the largest body of its kind in the world, and one that did adopt the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism in 2020. Imam Tawhidi will speak to us for approximately an hour, after which he has generously offered to answer questions that will be posed by our partner panelists. And then, time permitting, we will see if we can take questions from attendees who are watching today and can use the Q&A function on Zoom. I will introduce the panelists after the presentation. The webinar is being recorded and will be made available on our website and sent to all who have registered today. Imam Tawhidi, over to you and welcome.
Andrea, thank you very much, and salamun alaikum, peace be upon you all, shalom to everybody that is joining us today. It's my absolute pleasure to be with you, and I pray that God Almighty accepts this effort of ours that is in the path of establishing peace between all human beings, and especially between Muslims and Jewish people. I was telling Andrea that this is the last webinar for me. Therefore, I believe that I should take every opportunity to say what needs to be said. And as many of you might have seen me speak in the past, I try to maintain a very friendly dialogue when speaking. I don't like a lot of formalities. I believe we're all here to learn, even myself. So I will be presenting for 1 hour, and I will be dividing my presentation into 3 parts, which I will be speaking of in just a moment. I also believe that this is being recorded. It is being recorded. However, I strongly advise all of my friends to also take notes, because what I'll be sharing is not just a presentation, it's the summary or nutshell of my journey from fundamentalist, extremist Islam to being who I am today. And this is genuine information that you will need, basically the only information you will need for the rest of your lives when discussing issues revolving around Israel, Palestinians, Islam and its connection to Jerusalem, and basically everything that will happen in the future, whether it be the Abraham Accords and whatnot. So taking note is very important, and obviously returning back to this recording if there are other questions that you might have that might be answered throughout the presentation. So I shall begin by sharing my screen. The structure of my presentation will be basically divided into 3 20 minutes. The first will address and examine the main religious obstacles. Then I will be highlighting the geopolitical and geostrategic obstacles in the path of peace. And then we'll be reviewing some social obstacles while I provide my recommendations. And after that, I'll be taking questions from the audience as well as the panelists, I believe. I would like to say that I will be speaking as a Muslim from the Middle East, because I usually speak as a Muslim who resides in the West, or it has been westernized, or has assimilated, integrated. All of that is true, but it's very important for you and for those listening to see the perspective of the Muslim world. And you will come to realize that things are similar, but they are unique and somewhat different when we see what these solutions could be. How the Middle East is behaving with regards to peace is very different to how the West sees dialogue and peace. Although we may have a lot of things in common and many things might appear to be the same, but their essence is not necessarily the same. So I'll be speaking as a Muslim, as an Arab. I'll be putting my Western culture aside from me speaking English. And I want you to feel and experience what exactly we want as Muslims who would like to see peace between Israel and its neighbors and the Muslim world and the Jewish nation. The religious obstacles are basically doubts that the Islamists, and when we say Islamists, we should define that before speaking about them. The Islamist is a Muslim who believes in militant means and violence to spread their religious ideology. They do not believe in peaceful approaches towards religion and dialogue and inviting people to the religion. They believe that militancy is justified. So there are doubts, but the doubts are not presented to the Muslim world as just basic questions. No, they are presented as religious orders. Here are three main examples of these doubts. So when speaking about normalization and seeking peace with the Jewish people, it is presented as a sin, as a form of betrayal to God, to the religion, to faith, to ourselves. And it is presented in three main categories, which then unpack themselves. We're not going to unpack them all, but I will be addressing them briefly. The first is that Jews are not to be associated with whatsoever. The second is that God is at war with the Jews. Now, there's a big difference between claiming that Jews are at war with God, because then they could stop that. But what militant Islam says is that no, whether Jews are at peace with God or not, it is God that has decided to be against them, because they are the cause of all evil. And that is why you hear a lot of this nonsense that basically says things along the line of, at the end of time, Jews will be hiding behind trees, and the tree will call on to the Muslim to come and kill the Jew. Now, we need to just say, hold on a second. What's being said here is that nature and the planets and the rocks and the trees are all against Jews. So it's not an issue of faith. It's existence itself has rejected Jews. Therefore, a Muslim should not be, right? That's what the Islamists want. They create an obstacle for you and they make it seem very religious, as though it's an expectation from you. If you go against it, then you're essentially going against God. And by visiting a few verses, which we will today, we will see that none of these obstacles have any basis aside from them being political and carrying a lot of cultural fear to the point that a Muslim would question whether or not it's worth hugging a rabbi or visiting Israel and then having their family turn against them and so on, all in the name of religion. Then we have a lot of anti-Semitic tropes, a lot of accusations. For example, Jews killed prophets and whatnot. Then we have the main issue, and I believe this is related to the times we live in, and that is the issue of Palestinians and the state of Israel. So the claim that Jerusalem has been occupied, Palestine has been occupied, and therefore, even if Jews were not at war with God and God was not at war with the Jews, and even if Jews did not kill prophets and that nature is not against them, because they believe that Jews occupied Palestine, then there is no way. This is basically said to seal the case. Here it means treason, it means war against Muslims if you try to normalize with the Jews. Now, all of these claims go directly against the Quran, and I want to show you exactly how you can reach these verses. So we will be going to Quran.com, as you can see, Quran.com. And this is what you do, /verse 49, 13. Chapter 49, verse 13. The first accusation, the first charge is that Jews are not to be associated with, right? And by the way, the word associated, this association, has a lot more to it than just friendship. Because if the extremists believe that Jews are the descendants of pigs, Muslims do not go near pig. So we will get to why that is false. But what I want to point out now is that association has much more to do with than just being friends with them. That's why these obstacles are real and they need to be invalidated. And this is how you do it. Chapter 49, verse 13. What does God say to Muslims? Why this is important is because you will notice that all of my discussions revolve around the Quran. I do not discuss anything from the Torah, anything from the Bible. When discussing Islam and Jews, I do not speak about politics. We address it as we will later on, but that's to understand the situation we're in, not to clarify the truth. I do not discuss law, although I am a student of law. I do not discuss law. None of that is important. The Bible for me is not a book of authority. The Torah for me is not something I'm governed by. I, as a Muslim, if I want to be honest to myself, I am governed by the Quran. This is the book, this is the verse God will judge me by on the day of judgment. Nothing else. So if you want to do yourself a favor when discussing Islam and Jerusalem and the Jews, only use the Quran. If you're going to use history and geography, you've lost the debate. You've lost the discussion, because this is exactly what the extremists depend on. They depend on you to divert away from these verses. You need to stick to these verses and say, we're not talking history. We want to know what your God tells you as a Muslim. What does God tell you? So when I'm dealing with Jews and my family tell me, why are you speaking to Jews? I show them this verse. Case closed. What does God tell me as a Muslim? O mankind, he spoke to mankind, not just Muslims, not just the believers, all humans. Indeed, we have created you from male and female and made you peoples and tribes, that you may know one another. This means that we were meant to associate with other people and other tribes. And the Jews were present in Arabia when this verse was revealed, and the Jews are a tribe. So which amongst these people is the best? God says to me, the best and most noble of you in the sight of God is the most righteous. So, all humans, the best of you is the most righteous. Not the best of you is the Muslim. Not the best of you is the one who prays 50 hours a week. It's who's the most righteous. And for you to get to know one another. So me getting to know Jews and hearing them out and sitting with them is not a violation of religion. That is the first obstacle out of the way. Second verse is chapter 2, verse 62. Now, what does God tell me when the Islamist extremist tells me that God is at war with the Jews? God tells me, in fact, indeed, those who believed, those who were Jews or Christians or Sabians, even before the Prophet Muhammad, those among them who believed in God and the last day and did righteousness will have their reward with their Lord, and no fear will there be concerning them, nor will they grieve. God clearly says he has no problem with the Jews. Why? Because they believe in him. Jews believed in God before Muslims. Our ancestors used to worship idols. We used to create gods from dates, and when they got hungry, they ate the date. They would eat their own gods. While Jews were preserving monotheism. And therefore God says he has no problem with them. As long as you do righteousness, there will be bad in every religion. There are individuals, but a religion cannot be bad. A religion God sends cannot be bad. And those who believe in it, there's no problem. So association with Jews is not an issue. And God certainly tells you in the Quran, he's not at war with them. Why is this important? This is important because the Islamists say that normalization with Israel is political and that it is going against God, or that all of those Muslims in the UAE who are now hugging Jews and Israelis, they're all not religious. They're all betraying their religion. And that is a lie. God tells them in the Quran, Jews have nothing to worry about. Why? Because they were there worshiping him way before us. Now, same chapter is where God, according to us Muslims, becomes even more clear with regards to the Jews. What does he say? And I want you to pay attention to this verse because there's a very important point here, right? So God says, O children of Israel, remember my favor that I have bestowed upon you and that I preferred you over the worlds, plural, worlds. What does that mean? The Arabic word here, alamin. We have the world of the angels, the world of the oceans, the planets, all worlds that exist, the plants, the humans, what we see, what we don't see. In a religious context, the children of Israel have been preferred over all these worlds. I cannot deny that. God said so. But here is the Islamist obstacle. They look at this verse and they say, yeah, we know, but Israel here means Jacob. Right? They say Israel is another name for Prophet Jacob. So here it means Jacob, not all Jews. Here is where they are wrong. You see the word here, Ya Bani, it means, O children, right? If the word was, O abna, O individual household, children, as in your son, O sons of Israel, it would mean in Arabic, the very single children of Jacob. But the verse says what? O children, as in offspring. We use the word beni to say offspring. Abna to mean the children of a single man. This is where they are wrong. Well, they know the truth, but this is one obstacle. Again, we need to remember that most Islamists do not understand Arabic. They don't speak it. Like, let me give you a very good example. Ilhan Omar, right? She doesn't speak Arabic. Maybe she could understand a few words, but she cannot read the Quran the same way a Muslim in the UAE can read it. This is a fact. Many Muslims cannot recite the Quran, cannot read it. So what do? They rely on interpretations. And this is also the case with many religious scripture. Sometimes someone who's a Jew cannot read the Torah. They need help. So what do? They rely. And because the Islamists are so organized and they publish and they have all of their campaigns to proselytize in order, they have an advantage. So it's very important to note these issues. The other case was that the Jews sinned, right? They sinned and that they killed prophets. This is a historical fact. But here is where the Islamists are wrong. We Muslims also killed the Prophet Muhammad. The Prophet Muhammad and his family were murdered by Muslims. Yazid from the Umayyad dynasty killed Hussein, the grandson of the Prophet Muhammad, in the famous Battle of Karbala. There's always been conflict between the family of the Prophet during his lifetime and after his lifetime. So does that mean that all Muslims are bad because a group of them decided to sin, regardless of what sin it may be? Right? Regardless of the sin. Is there a link between sinning and losing your land? So if I sin, does that mean I have to now give Mecca away because I sinned? So if the Islamist says Jews sinned so they have no land, so do we take Mecca from the Muslims because in history Muslims also sinned? There is no link between sinning and losing what God has given you. Why? Because that's a principle. That is a principle. There's a big difference between principle and later developments. So I'm going to take you now to verse 20 of chapter 5. Okay? Write this down. This is a very important part of the Quran. Chapter 5, verse 20. And mention, O Muhammad, O Prophet Muhammad, tell the Muslims, when Moses said to his people, who were his people? The Jews, O my people, remember the favor of God upon you when he appointed among you prophets and made you possessors and gave you that which he had not given anyone among the worlds. He gave you the covenant. O my people, enter the blessed land. This is the land title for Israel. Pay attention. This is the land title for you as a Jew to live on your holy land. And it's in the Quran. It's chapter 5, verse 21. This is your land title. O my people, enter the blessed land. Where is it? Palestine. Who says this? The international interpretation of the Quran, Sahih International, which God has assigned to you. And look, two orders here. The first order is what? Jews enter the blessed land. The second order from God is what? And do not turn back from fighting in God's cause. Therefore, you would become losers. Go and take that land at all costs because God said so. Everybody listening, you need to differentiate between peace, that is the social peace, what we understand as ceasefire, and the peace according to God. According to God, terrorists like Hitler burning in hell is peaceful. What God wants is true peace, nothing else. If God says to the Jews, go and take Jerusalem and defend your nation, then that is peace. Maybe society has a different view of peace. That's not important. I do not care about society. I only care about what God says. God tells the Jews, do not turn back. Even if you have to fight for this cause, defend yourself and your nation. So what did the Jews say? They said, O Moses, within this land, within it, is a people of tyrannical strength. And indeed, we will never enter it until they leave. But if they leave, we will enter. Then what happened? They disagreed with Moses and they disobeyed. They disobeyed and they did not enter the land. They said, O Moses, indeed we will not enter it ever, as long as they, the tyrants, are within it. So go, you and your Lord, and fight them, and we're going to stay here. Right? So here is where the Islamists come and say that the main principle, pay attention, there are principles and there are later developments. What was the principle? The divine principle was that the land was given to the Jews, period. Here, then indeed it is forbidden to them for 40 years, which they'll wander throughout the land. Well, 40 years is over, definitely, has been over for thousands of years, so Jews can go back. But that's not the point. The point is, these were not all the Jews with Moses. This was just a group of Jews with Moses. So this only applies to say they disobeyed out of fear in the context of the Quran. Only the Jews who were with Moses in that area, not all the Jews. That's one. Secondly, all of this is irrelevant. All of this is irrelevant. Why? Because Moses is enough to go in the land and claim it for the whole of Judaism. So whether Moses went in with his followers or not, Moses does not disobey God. So as a fact, if there's an order, Moses went to the land. And Moses going to the land means he claims it for the whole of Judaism. He claimed it on behalf of God, for God, and those who believed in God. Period. So the Islamists, the militants, hate these verses. And they hate it when you know, I did not open a single book of interpretation for you. All what we are doing is reading the verse and using our brains. That's all what we need. If a religion clashes with the brain, then there's a problem with the religion. Because God speaks to me and judges me based on my brain on the day of judgment, based on my intellect. So he needs to give me a message that sits with my brain. When God tells a group of people to enter the land and he's talking to a prophet, the brain says what? It says, even if the people disobey, a prophet does not disobey God. So he went to the land, and if he went to the land, then Moses claimed it for the people. And we have verses in the Quran where Moses is ordered to take off his sandals because he entered the land. Let me show you this verse. This is also very important. It is chapter 20, verse 12. What does God say? God says, indeed, I am your Lord, so remove your sandals. Indeed, you are in the blessed valley of Towa. So, and I have chosen you, so listen to what is revealed to you. This is Moses entering, see here, and what is that in your right hand, O Moses? God's having a discussion with Moses. This is verse 12 onwards. So there are earlier verses where God is talking to Moses, right? But here is the point. Where was Moses when God told him, you are in the blessed land, in the valley of Towa? Let's go to Google. Let me show you this. Where is the valley of Towa? Right? Just an example, right? Sinai. We call it Towa. So what do we understand? That the blessed land is not what Israel claims to be its borders. That's not the Holy Land. The Holy Land is much greater. It includes Sinai, Jordan, parts of Iraq. It spans way across the oceans and whatnot. That is what the Quran means when it says the Holy Land. Wadi, valleys, not just the Israel of the map today. These Palestinians and their mufti and the Islamists, if they were really fighting for the Holy Land, they would go and claim Jordan and claim Mount Sinai and claim the oceans and the rivers, because that's all one package. Religion, we're not selling tomatoes. You can't just say, I want Jerusalem, and you have the rest. No, it's all one Holy Land. As a Muslim, I defend Mecca, not just the black cube, the whole of Mecca and the whole of Medina. And when I say Mecca belongs to me, I don't mean the mosque, I mean the entire city as a Muslim. So if you have the Palestinians claiming that the land is theirs, you can't claim just Jerusalem, you have to claim all of it. But that doesn't happen. Again, another Islamist obstacle that has no basis whatsoever in religion. Back to the presentation. So we have gone through the first issues and how the Jews have occupied Jerusalem. That is a lie. Why? Because Jews were ordered to go to Jerusalem the same way the Prophet Muhammad was ordered to go to Mecca. No one says Muhammad, our Prophet, peace be upon him, occupied Mecca, because God ordered him. And Moses is a prophet and God ordered him. So case closed. But here is the issue. But what about Al-Aqsa Mosque? What do we do about Al-Aqsa Mosque? It's there. But here is the other obstacle that has no basis whatsoever. And this is extremely important, my friends. Let's go to Google and just type Aqsa Mosque built date. This is a fact, but I'm just showing you this because I need you to, numbers don't lie. Numbers do not lie. When was Al-Aqsa Mosque built? It was built in 705. By who? By Abdul Malik bin Marwan, the Umayyad Caliph, right? So 705, Prophet Muhammad death. The Prophet died in 632, 73 years earlier. So here is the question we have. As a Muslim, this is my question. This is the supposed Al-Aqsa Mosque, okay? So if the Prophet Muhammad is believed to have come here on a miracle, he was raised from Mecca by miracle and he came here, how could he come here when this mosque came to exist 73 years after he died? How is that possible? The Prophet dies in 632. This is finished and built. The first prayer is held here in the year 705. How is it possible? That's impossible. It cannot happen because the Quran finished when the Prophet Muhammad was alive. When the Prophet died, there's no more revelation from Archangel Gabriel, according to our belief. So the verse that says, blessed be God who took his messenger from Mecca to Al-Aqsa, right? That happened during the Prophet's lifetime. He was taken by miracle, not after his death. So how can the Prophet visit a mosque that didn't exist? And how can a name be given to it if it didn't exist? The Islamist says, but there is a issue. Mosque means place of worship. So it doesn't have to be a structure. It can be empty land. And it can be considered a place of worship. This is where we say that is wrong, because the verse says, Al-Aqsa Mosque, whose surroundings have been blessed, which means there were borders, surroundings like the picture I showed you. But that only came to exist 73 years after the Prophet Muhammad. So in reality, the mosque they are fighting for is not Al-Aqsa Mosque, that is named Al-Aqsa. I could establish a mosque in Australia and call it Mecca. It does not make it Mecca Mosque. The real Al-Aqsa is in Saudi Arabia, between Mecca and Al-Ta'if. And we have strong evidence to suggest that it is actually in Saudi Arabia in an area called Al-Ja'rana. Al-Ja'rana. And its remains are still there. Why? Because the mosque is called Al-Aqsa, which means the farthest mosque, and there's a mosque called Al-Adna, which is the near mosque. And the great scholar and historian and biographer of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, Al-Waqidi, in his book Al-Maghazi, the book of history and conquests, he proves that the Prophet was walking distance between Mecca and Al-Aqsa Mosque. Have you seen the Muslims that go to Mecca? They wear two white cloths around them. We don't wear anything other than two pieces of cloth. And the Prophet got dressed in Al-Aqsa Mosque and walked to Mecca. It wouldn't make sense for him to walk all the way from Jerusalem to Mecca, because the pilgrimage would have finished by then, the date of the pilgrimage, the time frame. So it was 30 kilometers away. He walked to it. So the mosque Al-Aqsa is believed to be in Saudi Arabia. Then there's another belief. Al-Aqsa, because of its name, the farthest mosque, and that the Prophet ascended to it in heaven, some scholars say it's a mosque in the sky. Either way, both are stronger in claim than the one in Jerusalem, because the one in Jerusalem didn't exist during the time of the Prophet Muhammad. So it's very important for us to also understand. Now we have, when the Caliph of Islam, Umar ibn al-Khattab, the second Caliph, came to Jerusalem, when he put Jerusalem under siege, where did he pray? He prayed outside. Why? Because he was inside the church and he said, I'm not going to pray in church because he doesn't want Muslims to think that the church is now a mosque. If there was a mosque, he would have prayed in the mosque rather than refusing to pray in a church and deciding to pray outside on open land. He would have gone straight to the mosque, but that didn't happen. Another very important issue is that the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, before he died, he sent an army led by Usama. He said, لَعَنَ اللَّهَ مَنْ تَخَلَّفَ عَنْ جَيْشِ Usama. May God curse whoever doesn't join the army of Usama ibn Zayd. Where was the army heading? To Jerusalem. The Prophet was at war with that region and the Romans until his last day on this earth. And the fact that the Muslims had to put Jerusalem under siege means there were no Muslims inside. And there was no mosque for the Caliph to pray in when he went there. So none of this makes any sense to suggest that the Prophet had any connection to a mosque in Jerusalem. Yes, he prayed towards it. That's because that is where Judaism and Christianity and all Abrahamic religions prayed towards at the very beginning. Later on, Islam had its own direction of prayer. This is how easy it is with logic and a few historical facts and religious facts. You can destroy these obstacles that these extremists put forward. I would like to now move on to, very quickly, the political obstacles when discussing geostrategy and geopolitics. Countries operate in three ways with regards to each other. Now we're talking politics. There's a concept of balancing. So states balance against each other. Give you some examples. Russia and China are balancing their power against America. That is called balance of power. Then you have bandwagoning, which means countries with lesser advantages, whether it be coastal lines, economy, military. What do? They bandwagon, like Norway, like Australia. They depend on a greater power like America, like the UK, in order to provide it with economic stability, to provide it with military support if needed. And our countries do not balance against the countries they bandwagon on. Australia doesn't go and try to balance against America because it needs America. The same with other minor countries in Europe. Then you have isolation, such as North Korea. North Korea cannot balance against America. They don't have the power. Maybe they talk a lot, but Kim Jong-un doesn't have the power. So they don't bandwagon either. So what do? They go into political isolation. But what is the obstacle when it comes to peace with the Jews and Israel? I call it the Ayatollah concept, because there are only three. The first three ways are what is known in foreign policy, in geostrategy and geopolitics. You can read about these three. There is no fourth until the Iranian regime came in 1979. They introduced a new concept, and that is right in your face, right under your nose. They will infiltrate and create a militia. In Lebanon, it's Hezbollah. In Yemen, it's the Houthis. In Nigeria, it's the Zakzaki. In Iraq, it's all of these militias that they have. And it goes on and on and on. In Syria and whatnot. When they saw Hamas being a military body, that is perfect for their agenda, they started to fund it. Iran are Shia Muslims. The Ayatollah is a Shia Muslim. Hamas are Sunni Muslim Brotherhood. Why would Hezbollah and the regime side with a Sunni militia and fund it? Why? Because it has an agenda that they believe they can utilize. These are the obstacles that the Ayatollahs have introduced, a new form of foreign policy, and one that doesn't say we're going to balance against you, we're not going to bandwagon, and we're not going to go into isolation. We're going to come to you and create a militia. And we will then control the narrative, and we will fight you through these militias. So what is the real issue here when it comes to the political obstacle? It's the fact that the Western world agrees with the Iranians. They see that the Iranians have a point. Sometimes you see a Western world leader, we don't want to mention names, they believe that the deals with Iran should continue, and that there should be dialogue with Iran, and that these Ayatollahs should be heard and understood. They have a point. No, they don't have a point, because they're not elected by their people. That's to begin with. And they butcher their own people. Other countries that the West has attacked and has gone into and intervened have done much less than what the regime has been doing for 4 decades. So this obstacle is mainly driven by think tanks in America, in Europe, where whenever the issue of drawing the red line for the regime is raised, they come and they say, oh, no, 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 no. Don't make the people starve. Don't turn Iran into Syria. Don't do this, don't do that. Whereas that's not the agenda. The agenda is not to turn Iran into Syria. It's to make sure these terrorists do not continue spreading their arms of terror into other nations. So we'll get to the social aspect now. The social obstacles, Andrea, how much time do I have? I've lost track.
You still have 10 minutes.
Okay, excellent. So the social obstacles, I want to be very frank with, because I believe that what comes from the heart sits in the heart. There is an identity crisis, my friends. An identity crisis when it comes to discussing both the West and also discussing the Palestinians. Firstly, the Jewish people, many Jewish people, they refer to the Palestinians as Arabs. The Palestinians are not Arabs. Who said they are Arabs? They are not Arabs. The Palestinians are the descendants of the Romans, of the Mongols, of the Gypsies, of other nations that existed in that region. They are not Arab. So there is an identity crisis, and we should stop calling them Arabs, because they're not Arabs. An Arab is someone who descends from an Arabian tribe that comes from Yemen. I come from the Budayri tribe. We descend from Hatem al-Ta'i, the well-known Arabian legend. Al-Sauda Arabs, Al-Thani, Al-Nahyan, the rulers of the UAE. These are Arabs. The Palestinians are Arabized. They've adopted Arab culture. They are not Arabs. They are families. They're not tribes. So the Egyptians are Africans. They're not Arabs. They call themselves Arabs because they speak Arabic. They've been Arabized, but they're Africans. The Lebanese are Phoenicians. They're not Arabs, but they speak Arabic, some of them. They've been Arabized. Same with Pakistan. Pakistan, they threw out Hindu language. They adopted Urdu, has many Arabic words. They dress like Arabs. They adopt Islam. They have the culture. They're Arabized. They're not Arabs. So the Palestinians are not Arabs. The Arabs who came to the region and live in the Palestinian areas have no claim to the land because they're not from there. They belong elsewhere. It's very important for us to understand this, which means the cause is not an Arab cause. It's not Israel versus the Arab world. And it's not an Islamic cause either, because the mosque is not agreed upon to be there to begin with. And Israel has not declared war against Islam. It's an issue of Israel and its neighbors dispute over borders. To say that there's an occupation of a Palestine, bring me the name of the president or the prime minister of Palestine at the time of occupation. Who is this poor guy that was overthrown by the Jews? Give me the name of the ministers who served in that Palestinian state that was overthrown and occupied. They do not exist. So I'm speaking to you as an Arab, not as a Westerner. If you want me to come and help you, and which we have for 7 decades, giving you everything we have, our wealth of our nations, our time, our energy, everything. If you want me to fight for you and to hate the Jews, so you need a proper, valid argument. I cannot go killing Israelis just so Abu Mazen can be happy. Because you have an identity crisis. You think you are Arab. You're not Arab. I'll give you some examples. Look at their surnames. Shaheen. We don't have a tribe called Shaheen. In America, famous Palestinian. Linda Sarsour. Sarsour means cockroach. We don't have an Arabic tribe called cockroach. Who are these people? We don't know them. They're not from our regions. They don't. Look, if you say that the identity that works, fluid identity that works in the West is going to work in our regions, I tell you you're wrong. You don't become an Arab by claiming you're an Arab, because many things are involved. Tribal alliances, the protection of tribes, your tribal privileges. To say you're an Arab means you belong to a tribe. Which Arabian tribe? Until today, these tribes rule. So who do you belong to? You don't belong to any of them. Therefore, you have no claim to the land at all. There could be a claim that what about the Palestinians who converted from Judaism to Christianity to Islam? What about these people? The answer is yes, they have every right to be there. But the identity of the land doesn't change. Their religion changes. Tomorrow, the whole of Mecca can convert to Buddhism. Mecca is still Islamic land. It doesn't become Buddhist. The Jews converted to Christianity and then to Islam. So, doesn't change the identity of the land. It's still Jewish land. You have the right to the land if you purchase it. That is something we can discuss. But again, these fall under international law. I have no regard for Western and man-made law. I only care about the Quran. The Quran says the whole area was given to Moses. End of story. So I speak as a Muslim, not as a Westerner. And again, I will wrap up by addressing these issues of division and confusion and Jews forgetting the purpose and direction. So you would see why there is confusion. I'm going to get to that, but I want to conclude. So we have 5 points which are very important. 1, we address that the Quran acknowledges the Jewish claim to the Holy Land. 2, politics is unstable. The solution requires strategy, social bridges, not politics. You saw how governments operate. They can infiltrate. And also, if normalization takes place, it is political. Tomorrow, a new ruler in the UAE may come. You never know what will happen then, or in Bahrain. So therefore, it's social bridges that need to be constructed. Facing social challenges requires unity amongst our people. Palestinians are not Arabs. We discussed that. And then the Jewish claim must be amplified. This takes me back to what I want to conclude with. There's a lot of division, as you can see, because of what I am saying. The Islamists have their agenda. You have powerful people in the West who say they have a point, and therefore the truth gets lost between both people. But if we say, hang on, you're a Muslim, what is your book? The Quran, this is what it says. End of story. That's how I left my extremist beliefs, by just reading the Quran. We did nothing other than read the Quran today. and discuss a few social issues. But my belief is due to what the Quran says. That division and confusion can only go if the Jews are united. And I want to say this as a friend. Jewish people are very divided amongst themselves when it comes to this issue of how to defend your rights. Firstly, what is your claim? I am an Arab and a Muslim. I don't know what the Jewish claim is until today. What do you want? Do you want Jerusalem? You're not loud enough. You look at the Palestinian claim. What are they claiming? Jerusalem. What are the Jews claiming? We don't know. We know they want to live in their holy land, but if you do not start claiming Jerusalem, then nobody's going to take your cause seriously, or at least it's not going to be taken as serious as you would like for it to be taken. If the land is yours, you need to say the land is ours every single day, the same way the other side is doing. Because right now, if you go on Jewish Twitter, I think they call it Twitter, you go there, and what's the claim? Ben and Jerry's. Why? It's not going to stop. It hasn't stopped. Your entire cause, you've reduced it. Members of the Knesset giving statements, signing for an ice cream. Again, I'm speaking as an Arab. If you want me, I can turn into a Westerner and just understand everything. But I'm talking as an Arab. Are you serious? You want to establish your right to the land and you care about an ice cream? So what? Take your factory and go. The whole government, every activist, diplomats, people making videos, protest over ice cream? No, don't do that. Focus on your cause. Jerusalem, that's mine. Third temple, that's your belief. You have to make it very clear so that the rest of the world knows. Then you need to prioritize your efforts. We see today very few Jewish organizations moving in the right direction. How many hundreds of organizations are dedicated to fighting anti-Semitism? All of you know anti-Semitism is not going to stop. You all know it's going to exist until the last day. Until Judgment Day, it's going to exist. And even in hell, Hitler's going to say, Jews this, Jews that. Anti-Semitism is never going to finish. So why pour your energy in hundreds of organizations? 10 are enough in multiple languages. Make them powerful and focus on greater things. Because to say, stop hating us, not going to make people. Every religion has discrimination and whatnot. Anti-Semitism should not be the focus of the Jews. Right now, it should be Jerusalem and your right to the land in strategic ways and much louder than the anti-Semitism issue and ice cream and celebrities. Who are these people? Who is Gigi Hadid? Who is she to talk? Why does the whole Jewish world become very emotional? Don't do that. That's my advice as a friend who loves you. Don't do that. Ignore them. Focus on what you want. Because when you are busy with these issues of ice cream, Ben and Jerry's, the Islamists, they're working hard day and night on much bigger issues, on resolutions in the UN, on getting you voted against and whatnot. So effort should be in a different direction. Lastly, and I conclude with this, choose your allies and your friends wisely in a way that befits your cause. We see today many Jewish organizations, and I say this as a friend, they invite Muslims to speak just because they are Muslim, and they say things good about Israel. This is very dangerous because we are now seeing, and again, I have no issue with how women want to dress, but you cannot be bringing Miss Universe this model that who dresses in half naked pictures, and you want the Middle East to learn from her, and you bring her and you put her to give the world a lecture in your name to represent your cause and to call for no, you need an imam, or you need a scholar, or you need people who the Middle East will say, okay, we agree 50% with what he's saying. But to bring someone who, their situation is very different from religion and whatnot, they're not going to have the influence you need. So your donations and your efforts and whatnot, they need to be done in academia, right? Not even in religious side of Islam, no. Academia, in policy and whatnot. That is very important. Leave the models alone. Muslim or no Muslim. Leave the models alone and focus only on your cause. The world needs you. You don't need anyone. Listen, from an Arab, for centuries, people tried to persecute you as Jews. They failed. We did not have a government to protect you until Israel came. There was no government protecting Jews before then. You still survived. You do not proselytize. You don't have stalls in the street calling people to Judaism. One of these would be enough for any religion to go extinct. Persecution, no protection, and no invitation. One of these would be enough for a religion, and that's how many religions have gone extinct. God is telling the world, I have a covenant between the Jews and myself. You're never going to get rid of them. Erase this idea from your mind. These people are my chosen people. They will be here forever. So nobody can do anything for you. You are a special group of people who got chosen. We have to acknowledge it. And that's why all prophets, until, well, you don't believe in Jesus as Jews, but Jesus was a Jew and he's a prophet to us. And the Prophet Muhammad was not a Jew, but he married Jews. So God chose that lineage from that tribe to carry his message. We need to acknowledge that. You don't need any of these ice cream and models. Unite. Before I came to this event, I had 3 people tell me, don't join this organization. Don't speak for them. Why not? This is a wonderful organization. And end Jew hatred, I'm one of the biggest fans of Brooke Goldstein and the Lawfare Project and what they're doing. That is needed, a civil rights movement. And not only this, when I came to Toronto, Andrea, I was also told, don't join that organization. By who? By other Jewish people. It makes me confused. You all want the same thing. Unity, very important, so that people like me have a direction to address, and that we can have bridges built between the Muslims in the UAE and whatnot. And again, many of them in the UAE are also confused, and they ask me, which rabbi do we speak to? They seem to not speak to each other. So unity is very important so that we can see a ground for peace. You don't want to be like us. We Arabs, we're not united with anyone. Okay, we're not even united amongst ourselves. So to call you to come and unite with us, you'd say, well, unite amongst yourself first, and then we might want to join you. So you don't want to fall into the same issue. And I speak about mainly the activism that's going on in the Western world. I thank you very much for listening. May God bless you all. Again, I speak from the heart, and I made sure that I got what I wanted to say out, because it's the last webinar for me, as I told Andrea. And God bless you all. I'm here to take your questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Wow, it's amazing. And thank you for being so absolutely bloody candid. You said something that every Jewish person needs to hear at the end that's so important, which is to unite, to consider that we have a single message would be unbelievable. So if you know anything about the Jewish people, you know the joke, at 10 Jews in a room, you got 11 opinions. So you've given us a big challenge.